My name is Douglas Greenwood. You are
Robert Eggers,
the writer-director of Nosferatu.
so I'm told.
And we're here at Curzon in Soho the night after the Nosferatu London premiere. And you came from Berlin.
Yes, yeah. We did the world premiere in Berlin, which was really cool. It was an honor because we're now premiered Nosferatu in 1922, just footsteps away from where we had our premiere, which was pretty amazing.
Was that your idea?
No, it was either Focus or Universal's idea,
But
a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, special for you as a filmmaker, especially for a film that I guess means so much to you, the original.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. I was thinking last night, this time 10 years ago, you would have been preparing for The Witch to go to Sundance, right?
Really? Is that it? Is that exactly that?
2015,
Okay.
January 2015.
Wow.
So you would have had that, I wonder how similar that feeling would have been 10 years ago as a film is just about to go out there and reach its audiences compared to now. 10 years have passed. How much does that feeling feel the same?
In some ways, it's always the same. In some ways, it's the same as doing theater when I was a kid, and that's one of the things that I love about my work so much is that when I'm working with Willem Dafoe in a rehearsal room, and Emma Corrin and Aaron Taylor-Johnson, all these incredible actors, it really is the same stuff that I was doing as a kid. We're just, more experienced and there's more going on, but it is kind of essentially the same, which is amazing. But, it was my first feature. I was very nervous. We, with a film of this size, where that's finished in April and you're releasing it in December, we've had a few screenings, and you kind of have an idea about how the film might be perceived. You could be wrong, but you kind of have you want to take people's temperature a little bit. We had no idea about The Witch, and so that I did a ton of my own, it's like a trope of directors hating test screenings, but it's really not because you don't want to test your film in front of an audience. It's because the studios use the data from those screenings as if there is enough empirical data for it to count, but there's not, because there's just not that many people. But you do learn a lot. Anyway, The Witch, I had done a ton of test screenings with friends and family screenings to tweak things, but I'd never had it before. Had it in front of a big audience before, so it was wild. And then it totally changed my life. Maybe we didn't want to talk about The Witch this much, but it was really cool because when I won the director award, to my astonishment, moments after, my agent had calls from studios about directing big franchisey kind of movies, and I was like, wow. I had no idea that it is literally this ridiculous where they've never even seen my film, and that was eye-opening, and it is, yeah.
And I think there was originally the plan was that Nosferatu would almost be the film that would follow The Witch in some way. I think you said something about the idea of making Nosferatu after The Witch was almost blasphemous.
I actually spent some time working on a medieval movie, but in my inexperience, I didn't realize that the studio and I were on too much of a different page about what this medieval movie was going to be. So then I thought Nosferatu might be a good idea, and I was foolish to want to do Nosferatu potentially as my second film, and I'm glad that it didn't happen, and I'm glad that it fell apart several times over the past 9 or 10 years, because I've just grown a lot as a filmmaker, and I've become a more adept collaborator with all of my heads of department that I, work with over and over again, and we're further extensions of each other, and what has finally emerged, is not just my vision, but like a collective vision of a lot of people who, love working together and love pushing each other further than we thought we could go.
Yeah. Has your version of this film changed sort of drastically in that?
No, it really hasn't. It's mostly just been refining it. I think, much has been made, and appropriately so, of the fact that I've been obsessed with Nosferatu since I was 9 years old, and I've also have had the opportunity to talk about Dracula specifically, which then kind of made me realize like how long was interested in vampires before then, and how many times I was Dracula for Halloween and all this stuff. And it's like, this sort of like, it was a lifetime in the making is like kind of true, but it's not enough to be a vampire dork and to be like obsessed with something and to be passionate about something. You have to have like a reason to do it, especially something that's been done so many times. And when I began kind of taking a hard look at how to make Nosferatu my own, I always go back to, I was going back to the filmmaker's original intentions, studying the screenplay by Galeen, and I knew this anyway, but it really struck me that, Ellen is a somnambulist, and sleepwalkers in the 19th century were thought to be in touch with another realm. And all of a sudden, I realized that, if this is Ellen's story, if the female protagonist is the central protagonist, and we see this story through her eyes, that's probably going to have the potential for this film to be more emotionally and psychologically complex and more exciting. Because like one of the good things about doing something that's been done so many times is that you can see like what's been done well, what hasn't been done well, what's been missed, and so that is also kind of a luxury,
Yeah. I guess this is an adaptation, so it may be manifested a little differently, but I wonder how and where your ideas come to you. And once you have them, who's the first person you speak to about them?
Where do they come from? Who knows? A lot of times, there's certain things I've wanted to do for a long time, and I have like a little list of like things I want to do, and add things to the list, but sometimes something just happens, and also sometimes something. I mean, I wrote a script. I don't know if it will be made, but because of the way the market is right now, I was like, okay, this needs to somehow be something that I can call an IP, and it needs to be at a certain price point, and I would like to shoot it in X country, and blah blah blah. And it was a bunch of practical things.
Yeah. And
then I start thinking, then I start finding mythological, folkloric, whatever stuff that can work within that assignment, and then all of a sudden it can be very inspiring. But I would say I've started to talk to Jaren while I'm writing my screenplays a little bit, just so that lighting doesn't get too out of hand. But yeah, I mean, Jaren and Lou and Robin, the composer. I mean, all of my heads of department get the scripts pretty early, because it's nice for them to already start thinking about the world and learn, and if they have some time like researching the world even early on, just to kind of begin. But of course, you never know what's actually going to get greenlit. Although my wife, Allie, reads the script before anybody, of course.
She's the first port of call. She has great taste.
A recent script I wrote, she said, "This is one of your best, but no one's ever going to make it."
Wow. Do you feel like you have to get those ideas out of you, sort of regardless? Is there this sense of like, I can't move onto something else until I've got this idea.
Sometimes, I mean, but sometimes you've got a dud, and I'm super, super excited for Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
Yeah.
But, when my son was born, like, I had an unconscious urge, I'm sure because of that, but I didn't, as I started writing, I was like, oh yeah, this is why. But like, I started to try to do Frankenstein,
Wow.
and after like 2 weeks, I was like, there's no way I can do this, like, impossible. So I'm glad that Guillermo is finally making
Taking
his.
on. What was did you have a sort of an angle on that story? Was it sort of
no comment, but anyway, it definitely sucked, I'll tell you that.
Do you find yourself going back to things you've left behind?
Yeah. Not always, but yeah. I mean, I've definitely like that medieval movie that I started working on. I read it on a plane like a few months ago, and like it's definitely worth revisiting. But it also feels a little juvenile because of how, the stage I was in my career. But I think it could be good at some point.
Yeah. Well, that's the nice thing about, I guess, time and spending. Like this, Nosferatu could have happened, a long time ago and been a different film to the one you made now, and reflecting on these things sometimes can completely reinvent them in some ways, I guess. Can we talk a little bit about the idea of casting in this film and how it came together? When you're writing, you have a handful of sort of regular collaborators. Willem, I guess, most significantly. Do you write for Willem?
Yes. I only write for people I know will say yes, but Willem will say yes. So I write for Willem, and what a joy it is.
Yeah. And you've gathered such an amazing cast for this film: Lily Rose Depp, Bill Skarsgård, Nick Holt, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Emma Corrin, Simon McBurney. How did these pieces come together? Was there someone that was there? I mean, Willem, obviously. Was there someone that came in first, and then you build?
Yeah, they definitely have to work together, but I think and unfortunately you don't always get to have actors read with each other or against each other or whatever you want to say. So you kind of have to sometimes just use your best instinct on what will work. Aaron and Emma, absolutely, definitely Bill, certainly Nick. I've been talking to them for years, like about this film or other things. So they are people who I had, not close relationships with, but relationships with, And so as things were moving forward, I was able to kind of, see how the pieces would fit together, as you say. But it is a tremendously passionate and brave cast, and everyone was just like so hungry and ready to be there, and it was awesome. I mean, I think in some ways, one of the most important things I look for in casting is someone who really, really, really wants the part. Because they are going to bring it. Because they have the passion and the fire to do so, and I know, like, Bill in press has been talking about how he was intimidated by the role, which I didn't know to the extent of, of course, how could you not be intimidated by the role? But maybe he was more intimidated than I knew, having talked to him lately. But that hunger to succeed, filled him, and it's not about like. For any of these actors, it's not vanity. It's not like I'm going to be great. It's it's like it is telling the story and becoming the person and serving the role, and that's also why they're good, because they're not here to be movie stars. They're here to be actors and to tell the story.
You've spoken already about Bill. Bill plays Orlok, and his voice is terrifying. It's like part of this film's incredible soundscape, which is sort of like bone shaking and takes you close to death. It's really amazing. But for his voice, he trained with an opera singer, an opera teacher almost. And so there's actually very little sort of like pitch work done in post-production on his voice.
Yeah, I mean it's his voice.
Yeah.
He was not able to be as loud, so we definitely like turn the volume up. But that is how he sounded on set.
Was that his demand, or was that something you really wanted?
That was something that I really wanted, but Bill was excited, by it. I think he also said, again, like intimidated by the idea. I mean, it's again, like doing press with Bill lately. It's insane because he looks like such a beautiful little baby, and he's playing this like dead, middle-aged man with like super severe, features, and this insanely low, like phallic voice.
You had obviously been, you'd had this film in your mind for such a long time. And you shot this film in Prague, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about stepping into this world physically for the first time and what that does to you, both as a director but also emotionally as someone who has so much love for the original and also has so passionately wanted to make this happen. What does it feel like to step into that world?
I mean, the first step was scouting locations, both, could we actually shoot in northern Germany and Transylvania? Maybe, let's check them out, and we did we did a bit of a Footsteps of Murnau tour and went to the cities that he filmed Nosferatu in, and then also some other Baltic port cities like Stade and Bremen and Gdansk in Poland, and then going to Transylvania for the first time was completely incredible. 10 years ago was, or 8 years ago was much more of a time machine even than it is now. It's kind of insane how things progress. But then and then being on Prague, we built like over 60 sets. We built virtually everything you see in the movie, and when I was standing in the backlot set of Visburg, which is like 6 city blocks of all this brickwork, it was really emotional, honestly. I mean, it's always, I never take for granted how incredibly fortunate I am that like I get to make these films, and every one of my films so far I've been able to build the world, and so you're standing in your own little Disneyland that is like what's been in your mind. It's insane. But with Nosferatu, it was a little bit more emotional at times, because I'm also thinking about this like high school play version of Nosferatu that I directed when I was 17, and those like crummy little cardboard sets that me and my friends put together, and now you have this, it's wild.
Yeah. Do you like watching your films with audiences?
I don't really like watching my films, but sure, I've just seen the movie too many times. But it was interesting to watch it with a German audience. Willem Dafoe has a joke about schnapps, which got the biggest laugh in the in the movie.
You're often called a horror director, and almost seems like too sort of a straightforward a descriptor to describe what you do, because nothing feels so straight down the line. And I'm thinking about like the injection of humour in films like The Lighthouse and in films like this, because on the surface you don't think that you're going to have a laugh in this, but Willem's performance is so brilliant. Do you feel like there's a part of you that wants to inject a little bit of that into these?
It depends.
worlds?
It depends on the movie. I think like The Witch was so self-serious and humorless that I really wanted, when I did The Lighthouse, to completely break away from that and have something be like a legitimate black comedy.
Yeah.
But with Nosferatu, because this was intended to be my like most approachable movie, while I'm like building this dread, every single scene, even scenes that are comical, end with dread and something bad happening, or a bad realization or whatever, and there are these scary moments, but still in this context of something that is for a wider audience, you want to be able to like let the air out a little bit, like lower that tire pressure every now and again so people can chill. So that was important. But I look forward to making another incredibly depressing, humorless movie that makes you just want to curl up and die.
Can't wait. Do you get to the cinema often?
Not when I'm on a press tour, no. But I in general, yeah. It's a little harder now that I'm a parent, but still, I pretty good.
What will make you want to, make the effort?
I mean, whenever any great auteur is making a movie, but I go to a lot of horror movies, even if they're not like something that I think is gonna be good, just kind of, it's enjoyable. But I also learn a lot from horror movies that aren't great, because even a lot of schlocky horror movies have good craft. You can almost always learn something. I watched this movie called She Beast from the 60s. That was like maybe the worst movie I've ever seen in my life, and I did not learn a damn thing. And Barbara Steele's in it, and she's like wearing sunglasses and a kerchief and like a hat and like a coat, and she's like, I'm not in this movie. That was, I mean, really rough.
Well, you learn what not to do from things like that. Do you prefer sort of like retrospective screenings? Do you like seeing old movies in the cinema? If you love a film and you haven't seen it before on the big screen, will you make an effort to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I probably go to the Prince Charles for every other movie I see in London is probably at the Prince Charles, which is almost always playing stuff in rep, or whatever, playing old films.
Yeah. Do you have a spot in the cinema that you like to?
I like to sit. It depends on the theater. I've gotten to know a lot of the different theaters. But if it is a smaller art house theater, I like to sit in the first or second row in the center. Even though it's not the best for sound, but is the best to be immersed, because usually the screens are like unsatisfyingly small. But like if it's the Odeon Lux in Leicester Square, I like to be kind of in the middle, in the very middle. Same thing with like in an IMAX setting, whatever.
Yeah. Have you had a particularly memorable cinema-going experience, or like a discovery, I guess, that you've made recently when you've turned up to the cinema, something that's sort of altered you in some way?
I'm dying to see The Brutalist and a lot of other movies. I loved Anora and The Substance,
Yeah, The Brutalist is gonna blow your head off. It's crazy. Would you like to? Have you ever had the opportunity to program a season anywhere, or would you like to?
Not a season. That would be cool. I've done I'm programming a little Nosferatu themed thing at Lincoln Center, and I did one for the Northmen, and so I've done like little things. But yeah, it would be cool. That would be very cool. Yeah.
My last question is, what scares you?
When I was a kid, I was afraid of everything. I'm sure that's part of the draw to horror movies as a kid, and also, now I can control the horror by creating it. But I do not scare easily now. But I will say that James Wan's jump scares always work. He's very good at them. But I don't know. That's not. But that doesn't frighten me. But I jump.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Robert Eggers. This has been great. Thank you.